Well, have you heard of an organization called the Templeton Forgiveness Research Campaign? It began in 1999. It's a group that studies and categorizes the scientific research about forgiveness. They look at the physiological effects and benefits. So there's been studies, scientific studies, that show the positive benefits to a person regarding forgiveness, giving forgiveness or receiving forgiveness. So you can go to their site and there's articles and there's videos regarding this research. You can even take a quiz to see how forgiving you are as a person. I took that quiz. I won't tell you where I ended up on that scale. I still hold that against them. So, I had to laugh when I first started looking at this because don't we intrinsically all just know that forgiveness is a good thing? Don't we know that there's benefit to it? Because here's the truth about forgiveness. We all need it, don't we? For each and every one of us here, there will be times in our life where we've messed up, or we've gone off course, or we've not acted as we should have, or even if we don't actually know the content, just that we feel deep within us, just that visceral need for wholeness and for forgiveness. And it's not sometimes just about doing something against somebody else. It's about our spiritual relationship with God. That occurs for us all, I think. Sometimes a little, sometimes a lot. Our psalm today outlines that. Psalm 51 is written, it's a psalm of David. It's seen to be David's response to being confronted by the prophet Nathan, that we've heard about that in the Old Testament reading. And if you've been here for the last couple of weeks, we've tracked the story. You've heard the story. David messed up, and he messed up big. This psalm not only details his feelings about that, but it also shows his desire for forgiveness and to get back on track with God. And so I think in doing this, the psalm holds before us the pathway for our own forgiveness when we feel that. So I invite you to pick up your pew Bibles and turn to Psalm 51. You can also just go into your BAS and find that on, I think, page 770 it was. As I said, I think we all have the experience of needing forgiveness. But sometimes we find that forgiveness seems elusive, particularly in those times where the feelings of guilt or the feelings of shame seem to cut just a little bit too close to home. That's where David is here. David has not only had an affair, he got the girl pregnant. Not only then did he lied about it, he used his position to try to cover it up, and then when that didn't work, he murdered the guy. He murdered Bathsheba's husband. Now he's been confronted with God's stance on the matter. So if you look at verse 3, David says, "For I know my transgressions, and my sin is always before me." You know, it kind of describes this torment, the haunting remembrance of what he had done. That's what sin does, doesn't it? It rears its ugly head over and over and over again to torment and condemn. It always reminds us of that which we have done or that which we have not done, and it whispers wrath and damnation into our ears. In his book, Will Daylight Come?, Richard Hoffler tells a story of a little boy visiting his grandparents. And I don't think it's a true story. This little boy named Johnny was given his first slingshot. And so the boy goes out to practice. And he aims, he fires at, and he ends up killing his grandmother's pet duck, which of course he hides, and he remains silent about. His sister Sally, however, sees the whole thing. And Hoffler tells the story. After lunch that day, Grandma said, "Sally, let's wash the dishes." But Sally said, "Johnny told me he wanted to help you. Didn't you, Johnny?" And then she whispered to him, "Remember the duck." So Johnny did the dishes. Later, Grandpa asked if the children wanted to go fishing. Grandma said, "Well, I need Sally to help me make supper." Sally smiled and said, "That's all been taken care of. Johnny wants to do it." And she whispered again, "Remember the duck." So Johnny stayed, and Sally went fishing. Remember the duck. Remember the duck. Remember the duck. It haunts Johnny, and it ends up enslaving him. Not just to doing dishes and cleaning up, but to feelings of guilt and shame. Maybe for David it was remember the roof, or remember Uriah. But the result was the same. A constant and guilt-filled reminder of how far he had sunk. David in this psalm, he talks of sin, he talks of iniquity, he talks of transgression. He says it's always before him, and that it soiled him. It has completely degraded his heart and his soul. He prays in verse 7, "Cleanse me with hyssop and I will be clean." That's what it literally says. "Wash me and I'll be whiter than snow." The hyssop branch was something that the high priest of the temple would use to spray water on a leper who would come for cleansing. So David is saying, as leprosy is to the skin, so sin is to my soul. I'm dirty, I'm unclean, and I need to be washed. Cleanse me with hyssop. It makes me unclean. It enslaves me. Sin is ever before me. Sin separates us from God. David says, "Against you only have I sinned." For Johnny, that was the duck. For David, it was the roof. What's it been for you? And if you're someone who's in the thick of it right now, what's it for you right now? What's it doing to you? What's it doing within you? Charles Spurgeon writes that sin destroys peace of mind. It obscures fellowship with Jesus. It hinders prayer and brings darkness over the soul. See, but in today's world, we like to try to explain this stuff away, don't we? Or we try to find reasons why sin makes sense, or why it might not be as bad as we would like to suggest. I've had quite the kick over the last couple of weeks that we've been reading the story of David and Bathsheba at the same time that the gossip columns have been filled with stories about how Kristen Stewart had an affair on Robert Pattinson. And there's a whole lot of excuses that are thrown around as to why this happened and why this somehow makes sense. They try to justify that action in some regard. Well, it's just Hollywood. It doesn't matter. And even when there's actually a poll that's put out there, should Robert Pattinson forgive Kristen Stewart? There's an attempt to rationalize the behavior in order to make forgiveness somehow make sense in that situation, or somehow appropriate and deserving to what happened. See, David does none of that here. He doesn't explain it away. He doesn't make sense of it. He faces his transgression head on. "Against you only have I sinned, O God, and done what is evil in your sight." David understands the spiritual dimension, that sin has cut him off from God, has been a barrier between his relationship with God, and he takes full responsibility. You are proved right when you speak, and justified when you judge. See, even his cry for mercy, "Have mercy on me, O God." See, mercy, the definition of mercy is God not giving us what we deserve. You know, mercy and grace are kind of almost the same thing. You can think of grace as that God gives